And then we started painting murals of Jesus with dreads and braids, and the disciples likewise. And I don't necessarily think that is right, and that's the case either. They were, I don't know if Jews braided their hair. I don't know if their hair was like our texture or somebody's texture to be braided, but we started putting that, and you started seeing that in the church, and that's Brandon started off this discussion. Good times with JJ and Florida and Michael having the discussion of the black and the white Jesus being on the wall. Does it say in the Bible something about we don't need to know what Jesus looked like, or he wasn't going to be the prettiest of people, so it shouldn't matter? Only thing that matters is preaching him and the salvation that he came to give to us. Right. But I know I can see how the rest, people want to make it a bigger deal and issue than it is when he's a Jewish man. He lived in Africa for a spell, and he came back to his hometown. So it's like, where we at with that? We're going to move on to the next question. And that is, what are some of the dangers of presenting a one-sided narrative of history? Well, we always see now they're saying it, and they say it here, and now we're in the political scene, and it's the winners who write history. So we need to do a little bit more digging to understand the history and the narrative of the biblical story. I mean, it's all in the book. You got to do a little bit of reading, but you can dig through there and find it. You can also dig through other historical texts, and you can compare those to the text of the Bible and see where people originated from, and start getting a better story, a better broad story of the narrative that is the Bible. Does anybody have anything you want to say about it being a one-sided narrative?
Well, again, I go back to just the gospel itself. If we're talking about Christianity, because it's dangerous for it to be one-sided, because it's not what the Bible teaches, and the fact that we have made classifications of human beings and then grouped it. And then I think the worst part is the denial of these things that are actual real. Like, you'll have people in the comments, I'm sure at some point, saying that it doesn't matter about race, and race is it doesn't matter about ethnicity, it doesn't matter, because they don't have to deal with what we deal with in our community. Because if you are a white guy, you have seen these depictions your whole life. You don't think nothing of it. You go to church, you may very well be saved. But you will look at a discussion like this, or see a book title like this, and you will think it won't matter, because why? Your whole learning has been one-sided. So that's a dangerous thing. And we all have blind spots when it comes to learning. We all have blind spots even when it comes to scripture. But I think when it comes to the biblical narrative, it's definitely dangerous to be one-sided, because when you have a one-sided view of scripture, you have a truncated gospel, and that's not what the gospel that's not what the gospel was. The gospel was for God's people who will choose him. And it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is and things like that, but they'll tell you that, but then we'll support and say it's not a big deal that, Moses is depicted as a white man with an Australian accent or the English accent or something like that. So they'll tell you it won't matter, because they're not the one that's trying to explain to their children, as we have in books and things like that, that white isn't superior. So in all these things that we read and see, white is seen as superior, because these biblical characters that we are teaching them about, and Christ himself is always depicted as some white man. So when they go outside and see a white man, these are very real conversations that have happened, and not only in my house, but I'm sure Black people, other people of color around it, because the whole point of books like this is restoring, the dignity we have by the gospel. So being one-sided is an incomplete gospel.
Yeah, when you're being one-sided, that shuts you off from the knowledge that you need to get the complete gospel. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that only 144,000 are going to make it into heaven. Well, that's one-sided. And if you believe that, then what about everybody else? I mean, it's more than 144,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. you know, out there. And so it's important for us to be well-rounded, not stuck in one particular thing of scripture. And we've always tried to teach that in this ministry, so that when somebody claiming to be Jesus and he's coming out of Timbuktu somewhere and he's saying he's Jesus, but yet he has a Russian accent, then you know that's not right, because you study. You know Jesus is going to be coming back, and he's a Jew. He ain't going to be no Russian. He's not going to be a black man, you know. And so when you study and get well versed and well rounded in scripture, not one sided, you'll have a complete picture of the gospel, and hopefully you won't be led astray because of your knowledge and not being one sided on certain subjects.